fun.
Now, what isn't fun is if you're a rideshare driver, apparently, on Jetty Road, because many claim they're racking up fines of over $100 for the simple act of dropping off their passengers.
Indeed. Now, this was one of the things we actually started hearing about this a few weeks ago, but couldn't get much more information on it. Now, Bobby McCumber, you are down on Jetty Road at Glenelg. Bobby, is there anywhere that you can drop off where there is not a yellow line?
Yeah, look, at the moment, Jetty Road is pretty quiet, so there's plenty of parking spaces that you can come into and drop off passengers. But as we know, during the afternoons and the evenings, it does get a lot busier, and it is a lot harder to find a park. So it's in these cases where people are getting dropped off, and they might be parking in front of either yellow lines or in front of other cars, and rather than finding a spot. And so this is where people are getting pinged by these new CCTV cameras that have been installed here on Jetty Road. And like you've mentioned, a lot of the rideshare drivers, these are the guys getting pinged because they are just literally dropping passengers off as quickly and as fast as they can and picking them up as well. So I can see...
They don't want to park, do they? They actually want to just drop on and off. They want to do it quickly.
Yeah, well, that's it. Exactly. So they're just dropping off, picking up, but they are getting pinged by these cameras. Look, the City of Holdfast Bay Council have said quite clearly no driver should stop on a yellow line. They've also said that the majority of parking monitoring is done by community safety officers, but as we've said, here on Jetty Road, they have recently installed these CCTV cameras. So drivers, mainly rideshare drivers, are getting pinged and fined for it.
Well, if you live in that part of the world, maybe you're a rideshare driver, maybe you're just a resident. What do you think of this situation? 1300 222 891. Because, Bobby, we are joined by a rideshare driver who has received at least one fine that we've read about today. He's from the Adelaide rideshare group. His name is John Hall. Welcome, John. What did you get fined for?
Hi. I was dropping off a group on the corner of Moseley Street and was there for probably 10, 20 seconds, and unbeknown to me, I got snapped by a fixed camera on a pole there. And the unfortunate thing was I didn't hear about it for 2 months until I got the fine.
So it referred to an incident when you got the fine for something that happened a couple of months before. That seems a long wait in between.
It's huge when you think that you could do the same thing and over and over in the meantime, and really the intent of a fine should be to discourage repeat behaviour, which is hard when they're taking 8 weeks to send it out.
So, John, just talk through what actually happened for you to receive that fine. Who was in your car? Why did they get out in a place that had a yellow line?
Okay, yeah, I was taking 3 young ladies. They were meeting some friends down at the Jetty bar there, and they'd spotted their friends and were quite excited and started to open the door actually out in the traffic lane. So to be safe, I pulled over quickly to the side, which happened to be where the yellow line was, to let them out, and they jumped out and I just went on my way, and that's when I got clicked and fined by the camera.
Are you the only only rideshare operator you know in the group that's received a fine on Jetty Road at Glenelg?
No, in fact, about a month ago, I think it was up to 90, so I'm sure it's probably well over that by now that of our group members, over 90 of us have received fines. One fine was even in someone pulling over to let an ambulance go past. While they stopped on the line, they got snapped and received a fine.
John, have you thought about challenging these fines?
I've challenged it twice, so I've completed the statutory declaration that the council suggests you do, stating exactly what I just told you about the safety aspect of dropping the passenger off. They refused it, said no, I stopped, and we subsequently also, about a group of our drivers, met with the council face-to-face to discuss it. It appeared to be a positive meeting, and they said to again to dispute it, and that was back in about the 26th of June, I think it was, the meeting, and we've heard nothing since then.
And so the fine stands?
It still stands, even after the face-to-face meeting as well.
So what do you think needs to happen, John, then?
Well, I think for a start, if you've got 18 cameras taking sneaky snapshots of people, there should be a sign on each post there warning people that this is a camera that will issue fines if you stop on the yellow line. There's nothing like that down there at all.
John, are you likely to accept jobs on Jetty Road, Glenelg, either dropping off or picking up, if this is what you're risking?
Well, it's actually impacted my behaviour everywhere in the city. So in the past, I would be, okay to stop for a second to pick someone up, even in the city. But now I'll pull over to the side street and ask them to come and walk down and meet me down, where it's legal to park. So it has changed. It's inconvenienced people, especially people with disability, that maybe can't walk that far.
So, John, do you think that more parking spaces should be made available for, say, rideshare cars in Adelaide and predominantly Glenelg?
Definitely. That was actually the main driver of our meeting. We were pushing, and we went to the extent of providing some maps and showing them where we'd like to have places located. So far, the only response since the meeting has been to repaint the yellow line that was a bit faded.
It's interesting, though. We're talking about Jetty Road, Glenelg. You say you've got similar concerns in other parts of the city. Is this something that's increasingly apparent just for rideshare operators and cab drivers, and I guess anyone picking up teenagers or children and young people working?
Definitely. In fact, the yellow line issue seems to have gone out of control. There's a corner in the main King William Street North Terrace corner in Adelaide where we often have to pick people up. We used to be able to go down a laneway. Recently, that laneway has had yellow lines painted all the way around at both sides. So the closest legal spot to pick up someone from that rooftop bar on the corner there is probably over on Hindley Street, which is probably 200 or 300 metres away.
Sounds like it's really tough to do your job then.
It's very tough to do it legally.
Yeah, it is. Well, we get back to whether these fines are to raise revenue or to discourage dangerous behaviour, because let's face it, the majority of people who order Ubers, especially on busy Friday, Saturday nights, are jumping into cars often that cannot legally pull over in a space. And even if they could, often those spaces are already taken up.
Well, I mean, you might want to argue about that side of things and think that that's, it's illegal to park on a yellow line, whatever. You might have that argument. But that example of someone who just pulled over to let an ambulance through, it'd be hard to argue that that wasn't a reasonable thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, that seems ridiculous. And also, if what John is saying is true, and there's no reason to disbelieve him, if someone has opened the door to a moving car, and there are people who are drunk in these ride shares, and there are people who are drunk who are getting into them, then you have to stop as a driver because you risk injuring someone. Indeed. So, I'm surprised that you weren't able to challenge that fine successfully, John.
Just looking at
and walk down and meet me down, where it's legal to park. It's inconvenienced people, especially people with disability, that maybe can't walk that far.
So that's a little bit of what John Hall, rideshare driver from Adelaide Rideshare Group, had to say. We did ask the City of Holdfast Bay if there was someone that could speak to us. They said there's no one available. I do have a statement that I'll get to in a moment from them. Before that, though, Karen Stanley is traffic lawyer with Stanley Law and joins us this afternoon. Karen, thank you for your time this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
So what are the rules around being able to use CCTV to fine people for offences like this?
There is nothing in the legislation that says that cameras can't be used to detect speeding fines. In fact, there's nothing in the legislation that talks about not speeding fines, about fines in general. Right. There's nothing in the law that says it has to be by an eyewitness or it has to be by a camera being held by someone, or that it can't be via CCTV cameras.
Okay. And then what does the law say about stopping on a yellow line if you are using that space to pick up or drop off passengers?
I'm afraid I have some very, very bad news for the taxi drivers. The law says it's an offence to stop on a yellow line. There are some exceptions, and one of those exceptions is to get out of the way of an emergency vehicle. So the driver who was given a fine would have had a defence if that was taken to court. But otherwise, you cannot stop your car on a yellow line. So there's no exemption for a couple of seconds here, or to pick up and drop off passengers, or for the safety of passengers. So strictly speaking, if you stop on the side of a road where there is a yellow line for whatever reason, other than the exceptions set out in the law, which are very, very limited, then you are committing an offence. I will add, I think it's a little bit uncool of the council to suddenly start issuing these fines without some prior notification, because of the impact it's going to have on lots of people. And I certainly don't think it's safe for people to be walking down side streets, to be meeting Ubers or taxis. But legally, the council is in the right here.
Okay, but there's the potential that you could put signage up as a kind of measure of goodwill and as a way of trying to spread the message, which I guess ultimately is, hey, please don't stop here.
I think there is certainly a lot of goodwill that can be engaged in by the council. I think this is, while legally correct, it is leading to some really unfair outcomes. And look, I agree that there's a problem with cars parking where there is a yellow line, but I'm sure that the council can work with the drivers to find a remedy that works well for everybody and keeps the roads safe by not having cars parking on a yellow line, but still allowing appropriate use of vehicles that keep passengers safe.
Okay. Do you know whether do councils have the right to have some form of discretion? You've mentioned that, okay, by the letter of the law, there are very few exceptions. Is there maybe a less formal discretion that could be applied by a council when something changes, or as a kind of bedding in period, if I can put it that way?
There is always discretion with fines. So there is in the legislation, there is scope for a body that issues fines to waive the fine if it is trifling. They use the word. I have very, very rarely seen that utilised.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I can give a personal example myself. Several years ago, I had to go to the emergency ward at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. I got a parking fine. I was able to write to them and explain why, and it was waived. So there is a level of discretion, but the councils don't have to exercise that discretion.
And I'd guess that if you got to the point of engaging a lawyer, it would kind of become a bit of a moot point, because that would probably cost more than the cost of the fine.
Oh, it definitely costs more than the cost of the fine. And there is also risk in going to court, because if you challenge a council fine and you lose in court, then the council can ask the costs, and they do. And those costs are often $5,000 or $6,000. So I don't recommend lightly that people take these fines to court.
We also heard this morning in that discussion from John Hall, he discussed as another part of that conversation that he's seen what he believes are some new yellow lines going in on King William Street in the city. I wonder, do you know whether we're starting to see councils of varying jurisdictions starting to put more of those lines down, and then, as you say, does some accommodation then or alternative need to be made?
I'm not aware of further lines. I'm aware of lots of roadworks around the city, but there has to be a process that the Department of Transport or the city councils have to go through to change parking or standing on the roads or changing the road signage. But I certainly think that there is scope for all the bodies that hand out fines to have a period where they're going to let the public know, okay, we can detect you by camera. We are going to start to issue fines. For this, we will give you a 3-month warning, like the police have quite reasonably done with the mobile phone cameras. There's certainly scope for that.
Okay. Karen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
That's Karen Stanley, traffic lawyer with Stanley Law. A couple of your texts coming through on this. Deb at Warradale saying not being able to pull over and stop for an ambulance is ridiculous. What a driver's supposed to do when people's lives are at stake. Another person says Tea Tree Council have perfected the art of issuing infringements via photographs. I got done while pulled over in the bike lane that never gets used to answer an urgent phone call. I was there for less than 2 minutes and got a fine in the post a couple of weeks later, and that cost me about $490. Let me know what you think about this. 0467 922 891. Is it important that these yellow lines, well, the rules are followed, that they're there for a good reason, to keep traffic flowing and to keep the traffic movement safe? Or does there need to be some level of discretion, or maybe when a new technology is being brought in, a broader awareness campaign? Let me know what you think. 0467 922 891. As I say, the City of Holdfast Bay have declined to join us. They have sent through quite a lengthy statement. I'll read some of that. It says, the City of Holdfast Bay has a camera specifically monitoring a high safety risk area on the corner of Jetty Road and Moseley Street in Glenelg. This is to monitor for statutory offences under the Australian road rules, such as cars stopping on a yellow line. The majority of monitoring of parking infringements is undertaken by Council's community safety officers. Cameras are used in areas deemed to be a significant safety risk or in identified problem areas where officer input hasn't had an effect, and then reiterates the point that it's a significant safety risk in that area. Vehicles stopping on the corner prevent buses from using the junction. They can block the roads and mask pedestrians crossing the roads. They also do say in the statement they're working with rideshare organisations, are looking at creating more spaces for all types of drop-offs, for example, short-term parking bays. And they say if you have a concern regarding a parking fine, get in contact and they will review it. 0467 922 891 is the text number. It's 23 past 1. Up next, the GP shortage has been having a big impact on our health system. The AMA is saying